When a man finally chooses emotional detachment, something powerful begins to shift, not just in him, but in her too. It's not anger, it's not revenge, it's peace. A kind of peace that comes when he no longer feels the need to explain himself, justify his love, or prove his intentions. For the longest time, he kept trying to make her see the effort, the loyalty, the consistency. But when she didn't, when his presence was mistaken for weakness and his kindness for desperation, something inside him quietly broke. That break was not loud, not dramatic, not visible, but it changed everything. She never noticed when he started pulling away. It's always subtle in the beginning, fewer messages, shorter replies, less effort in keeping conversations alive. She thought he was just busy. She thought it was a phase. What she didn't realize was that he had already begun the process of letting go. Detachment doesn't happen overnight. It's the slow withdrawal of emotional investment from someone who no longer values it. It's when he stops trying to convince her of his worth and instead focuses on remembering it himself. There comes a moment, and every woman who has taken someone for granted eventually feels it, when the silence becomes too loud. The man who once checked in, who once cared deeply, suddenly doesn't. No texts asking if she's okay, no calls, no presence. That emptiness she once thought she wanted becomes unbearable, because it's not that he disappeared, it's that his absence now reveals everything she was blind to when he was near. You see, emotional detachment is not about punishing her. It's about healing himself. He's no longer reacting, no longer explaining, no longer chasing clarity that never existed. He realizes that love cannot coexist with constant disappointment. He realizes that peace feels better than being understood by the wrong person. And in that realization, he becomes calm. That calmness is the very thing she once mistook as disinterest, but now it's what draws her back because she can feel that his energy has shifted. When a man stops trying to be understood, he becomes mysterious again, and mystery creates attraction. She begins to wonder what changed, what made him so composed, so indifferent. She replays the moments when he was available, the things she said, the times she dismissed him, the way she undervalued his effort. And it starts to sink in. He wasn't weak for loving her deeply. She was blind for not recognizing that depth when it was right in front of her. There's a certain irony in how women start to miss men they once overlooked, not because he became someone new, but because she finally sees who he truly was when she no longer has access to him. His detachment becomes a mirror reflecting her mistakes, and that's a painful mirror to look into. She starts to crave his attention, not out of love at first, but out of nostalgia for how safe his energy once felt. That's the power of emotional detachment. It's silent, it's mature, it's irreversible. Once a man learns that peace feels better than chasing validation, he never goes back. And when she realizes the same, that she lost something pure, stable, and loyal, it's already too late. He's not the same anymore. He's emotionally free, and she's emotionally trapped in the echo of her own choices. Value is rarely seen in the moments of constant presence. When something or someone is always there, easily accessible, and endlessly patient, we tend to forget how special that is. A man who genuinely cares gives his time, his energy, his loyalty, not because he has to, but because he chooses to. But that's exactly why it's so often taken for granted. She assumes he'll always pick up the phone, always forgive, always stay. The comfort of his consistency makes her careless. She starts believing his patience is permanent, but nothing and no one stays when they're unappreciated. It starts slowly. He begins to notice that his presence doesn't bring joy anymore, it's expected. His affection doesn't move her, it feels routine to her now. His good morning texts are met with indifference. His plans are brushed off with excuses. The attention he once gave so freely now feels unnoticed, like it doesn't matter whether he shows up or not. And that's when something inside him starts to shift. He begins to see that being available to someone who doesn't value it is not love, it's self-neglect. When he finally pulls back, it confuses her. She wonders what changed, but she doesn't realize that nothing changed. He just stopped overgiving. His silence becomes louder than all the words he once used to explain his love. His distance makes her remember the comfort she once dismissed. The same availability she ignored now becomes the void she feels. That's when she starts to realize value isn't seen when something is constantly present. It's felt deeply when it's gone. She starts recalling the little things, the random messages that made her smile, the way he listened without judgment, the times he showed up even when she didn't ask. Back then, it all seemed ordinary, but now she starts to see how rare it actually was. Because in a world where most people love with conditions, he loved freely. In a time where people play games, he was honest, and now that honesty, that steady affection, that warmth, it's gone. When a man withdraws his energy, it creates a silence that forces reflection. She starts comparing. The attention she gets from others doesn't feel the same. The conversations don't feel as deep. The connection feels shallow. Because it was never about attention, it was about energy, the kind of energy that makes you feel seen, safe, and chosen. And that's what she lost when she took him for granted. It's human nature, we value most what we no longer have access to. When he was always there, his love seemed ordinary. When he stopped showing up, she realized how extraordinary he truly was. That realization comes with a sting, the kind of pain that doesn't fade quickly, because once she sees his worth, she also sees that he's already moved on. His absence has given her the space to realize what her presence once meant to him, and how she never matched it. Value is not proven through words, it's revealed through absence. The same heart she once ignored becomes the standard she now searches for in everyone else. But no one quite feels the same. His absence becomes her reminder, her silent teacher. She learns that love, when unappreciated, doesn't disappear, it simply redirects. He didn't stop caring, he just stopped offering it where it wasn't valued. And by the time she recognizes that, the door has already closed. Respect is the foundation of every meaningful connection, and when it's missing, even love begins to fade. There comes a time when a man who's been patient, understanding, and forgiving finally realizes that his kindness has been mistaken for weakness. For so long, he tolerated the little things, the dismissive tone, the cold responses, the indifference. He excused the disrespect because he cared. He thought if he just loved harder, stayed longer, proved himself more, she would eventually see his worth. But she didn't, and when that realization finally sinks in, something powerful shifts within him. He begins to respect himself more than he craves her validation. At first, she doesn't notice it. His silence feels strange, but not alarming. She assumes he'll come back around like he always does. What she doesn't see is that he's not angry, he's awakened. He's no longer reacting to the emotional push and pull. He's no longer trying to decode mixed signals or beg for clarity. Instead, he's choosing peace over confusion, dignity over desperation. That's the mirror moment, the one where his self-respect silently forces her to confront her own behavior. When a man who once tolerated everything suddenly tolerates nothing, it's not pride, it's growth. His withdrawal becomes the mirror she cannot avoid. For the first time, she starts to see herself from his eyes, how careless she had become with his emotions, how dismissive she was with his efforts. His absence reflects the imbalance that had always existed, but she never wanted to see it. That's when it begins to hit her. She didn't lose him because he stopped loving. She lost him because he started respecting himself. And that self-respect looks different. It's calm, it's detached. It doesn't beg, it doesn't chase, it doesn't prove. It simply walks away in silence, not to punish, but to preserve peace. That silence becomes deafening for her. Because this time, he's not pretending. He's not using distance as a tactic. He's genuinely done explaining what should have been obvious from the beginning. The respect he now gives himself is the same respect he once begged her to give him, and now that he's given it to himself, he no longer needs it from her. She starts to feel the void. It's not just about missing his presence. It's about realizing how her own actions led to his detachment. She begins to remember the way he listened when no one else did, the way he cared even when she pushed him away, the way he showed up without being asked. But now that version of him doesn't exist anymore. He's evolved past needing her to see his worth. His peace has become more valuable than her attention. That's the irony of self-respect. Once a man truly finds it, he never goes back to what disrespected him. And that's exactly what makes her start to miss him. Not the version she took for granted, but the version who loved her unconditionally. The version who made her feel safe, desired, prioritized. She starts to replay moments, realizing that every act of care was a reflection of his depth, and that she dismissed it because she thought it would last forever. Now every bit of his silence teaches her something. Every ignored message reminds her of how many times she ignored his effort. Every moment of his peace shows her how chaotic she had made his love feel. That's the mirror effect of respect. When he finally respects himself enough to walk away, she finally sees the version of him she never appreciated. And by the time she does, it's too late. Because once a man replaces his desire to be understood with the desire to be at peace, his heart doesn't turn back. His silence becomes permanent, his boundaries unshakable. She begins to understand that she didn't just lose a man, she lost the version of herself that he once made her feel safe to be. That's the moment the lesson becomes clear. Respect was always the key, but she only learned it when the door was already closed. Silence has a language of its own, and it speaks the truth that words often fail to express. When a man goes quiet after giving his all, that silence isn't empty, it's full of meaning, full of lessons, full of realizations. For so long, he tried to explain, to make her understand, to fix what was breaking. He used his words, his time, his patience, but nothing changed. She heard him, but she never listened. She saw him, but she never truly looked. And then one day he stopped. No more calls, no more messages, no more trying to be understood. That silence became his closure. At first, she thinks he's just tired, that he'll come back when things cool down. But this silence feels different. It doesn't carry frustration, it carries finality. It's not a reaction anymore, it's a decision. He has accepted what she refused to see, that love without appreciation becomes exhaustion. So he withdraws not to make her miss him, but to rediscover himself. In that silence, he begins to heal. He learns how peaceful life feels when he's not constantly trying to prove his worth to someone who couldn't recognize it. And while he's finding peace, she's losing hers, because silence is not just the absence of sound, it's the presence of realization. When his voice disappears, she begins to replay it in her mind. She remembers the way he used to call her name, the way he always reached out first, the way he never let a day pass without checking on her. Now there's nothing, just quiet, and in that quiet she starts to hear the echoes of everything she ignored. His silence becomes the loudest thing in her life. The same peace he's learning to embrace becomes her chaos. She opens her phone, scrolls through old messages, listens to old voice notes, reads conversations that once felt ordinary but now sting with nostalgia. Every word he once said now feels heavier because she finally understands their weight. She starts to realize that his silence isn't about her anymore. It's about him finally choosing himself. That's what hurts the most, not that he's gone, but that he's at peace without her. Silence teaches what noise never could. It makes her reflect, rethink, and regret. She starts questioning her choices, why she pushed him away, why she didn't value his consistency, why she confused his care for weakness. Every day that passes without hearing from him deepens the void. She starts to crave the comfort she once took for granted. She tries to reach out, but his responses are cold, short, distant. Because once a man finds clarity in silence, he doesn't return to confusion. There's a moment, quiet but powerful, when she realizes she's no longer part of his healing. She's part of what he had to heal from. That truth hits harder than any argument ever could. His silence becomes her consequence, not out of bitterness, but out of growth. She begins to see that her loud indifference once silenced his heart, and now his silence is teaching her the value of what she lost. And that's how silence becomes the loudest lesson. It doesn't shout, it doesn't blame, it doesn't seek revenge. It just asterisk is. Asterisk, it's calm, it's final, and it's honest. Because when a man who once loved loudly learns to love quietly within himself, there's no going back. He doesn't hate her. He doesn't wish her harm. He simply no longer feels the need to explain why he left. His silence speaks it all, and that's what she'll remember, not his words, not the arguments, not the endings, but the silence. The silence that showed her what his presence truly meant, the silence that became the echo of everything she took for granted. And long after he's moved on, long after his peace becomes permanent, she'll still hear that silence reminding her of the man who once spoke with love and later taught with absence. There comes a time when a woman realizes that the distance she once ignored has become the space she can't escape from. At first, it doesn't bother her. She thinks he's just being quiet, maybe a little distant, maybe occupied with life. But what she doesn't realize is that he's no longer trying to be understood. He's done trying altogether. His silence isn't a pause, it's an ending. It's not about making her miss him, it's about reclaiming his peace. And as he learns to live without her, she begins to learn what life feels like without him. That's when everything starts to shift. She starts to feel something she never expected, a kind of emptiness that doesn't go away. It begins with small moments. She scrolls through her phone and realizes there are no messages from him waiting anymore. No good morning texts, no check-ins, no voice that once made her feel safe. She tries to distract herself, but somehow everything reminds her of him, the songs, the places, the conversations. The silence he left behind becomes a constant presence in her world. It's as if he's everywhere and nowhere all at once. What hurts most is not his absence, but what it represents. His distance is proof that she pushed away a man who only wanted to love her right. The one who saw her beyond her moods, beyond her flaws, beyond her walls. and now she realizes how rare that kind of presence was. She used to think she could always come back, that he'd always be there, waiting, forgiving, understanding. But this time he's not. His silence has boundaries. His peace has replaced his patience. He's not angry, he's free. And that's what makes her panic. She starts remembering the little things, how he listened even when she spoke with frustration, how he cared even when she gave him coldness, how he stayed even when she gave him reasons to leave. She replays every moment, trying to find the one where it all changed, but there wasn't one, it was gradual. It was every time she took him for granted, every time she chose her pride over connection, every time she assumed he'd never leave. Now she understands the truth. Every silent man was once a loud lover who got tired of not being heard. That's when missing him becomes more than just emotion, it becomes realization. She starts to see that what she thought was ordinary was actually extraordinary. His consistency, his loyalty, his calmness, things she once found boring, now feel irreplaceable. Because what she's finding out is that the world is full of people who talk, but very few who truly understand. And he was one of the few. His silence now echoes louder than any conversation she's having with anyone else. She begins to wonder if he ever thinks of her, but deep down she knows he doesn't. He's moved on not because he stopped caring, but because he learned to care for himself. His healing doesn't include her anymore. She was a chapter, not the story. That realization cuts deep because she finally sees that love isn't about possession, it's about presence. And once that presence is gone, no amount of regret can bring it back. In the end, she doesn't miss him because of what he did. She misses how he made her feel. Safe, seen, understood, loved without having to ask, but she also knows she'll never feel that from him again. Because when a man detaches completely, it's not a strategy, it's a transformation. He's not waiting for her to realize what she lost. He's already accepted that she wasn't ready to value it. So she carries his silence like an invisible reminder, not of pain, but of loss, the kind of loss that doesn't scream, it just lingers quietly in the background. And as time passes, she finally learns the hardest truth, that the man she once overlooked became the standard she now searches for in everyone else. And no matter where she looks, no one feels quite like him, because once he detached, he didn't just leave her life. He took the version of her that felt most alive with him. Healing is a strange thing. It doesn't begin with peace, it begins with pain. When a man who once gave everything finally lets go, he doesn't instantly feel lighter. At first, it hurts. He feels the weight of everything he carried alone, the love that went unreturned, the words left unsaid, the effort unrecognized. But as the days pass, the silence that once felt heavy starts to feel like freedom. He realizes that he doesn't need to be understood to heal. He just needs to stop explaining himself to someone who never really listened. That's when true healing begins, not when he forgets her, but when he remembers himself. Healing isn't loud. It doesn't come with declarations or revenge or new distractions. It comes in quiet moments, when he wakes up and doesn't reach for his phone, when he stops checking her social media, when her name no longer triggers an ache in his chest. It's gradual, gentle, and real. He starts to fill the spaces she once occupied with things that nourish him: peace, purpose, self-respect. He starts doing things for himself again, and little by little, he becomes the version of himself that existed before the constant exhaustion of trying to be enough for someone who couldn't see his worth. But healing has another side. It's also the beginning of her regret. While he's learning to breathe without her, she's starting to suffocate in the silence he left behind. The peace that comforts him is the same quiet that unsettles her. She begins to replay moments, the arguments, the laughter, the tenderness, and realizes that the love she dismissed wasn't ordinary. It was patient, it was consistent, it was real. She starts to feel what he felt, the emptiness of being unseen. But for him, that phase is over. He's already accepted that not every love is meant to last, especially the kind that requires losing yourself to keep someone else. He no longer needs closure from her because he's found it within himself. He's accepted that sometimes walking away isn't about giving up, it's about honoring your own worth. He no longer seeks apologies or explanations. The silence that once felt unbearable now feels sacred. It's in that quiet that he rebuilds his confidence, his focus, his boundaries. He no longer needs her validation to feel significant. The same heart that once waited for her reply now beats calmly in its own rhythm. Meanwhile, she starts realizing what his detachment truly meant. It wasn't a game, it wasn't manipulation, it was a lesson. A lesson in how love should never require begging, how peace is more valuable than chaos, and how losing someone who respected you is far worse than losing someone who loved you. She begins to understand that healing looks different for everyone. For her, it's regret. For him, it's rebirth. And that's the quiet truth about detachment. It's not about making the other person miss you. It's about remembering your worth after they made you forget it. He's not bitter, he's grateful, because the same experience that once broke him has now built him into someone stronger, calmer, wiser. The same silence that once felt lonely has now become his sanctuary. He's not waiting for her to return. He's simply walking forward, lighter, freer, and finally at peace. That's when she truly begins to miss him, not because he's gone, but because she can feel that he's healed. She can sense that his energy is no longer attached to her. That realization hurts in a way words can't describe. Because when a man heals, he doesn't just move on from her, he rises above everything that once held him down. His healing becomes his quiet revenge, his peace his loudest statement. And the lesson she's left with is clear and irreversible. The man she took for granted didn't just walk away, he evolved into someone she'll never have access to again.